house, no, not the house any longer.
House is good.
No, no, it's not.
No, that doesn't mean, that doesn't mean the investigation. And there's been classified. So as you go through the process, you have to have the facts drive the process, in my opinion. And that where we are trying to go is if the facts demonstrate that an independent commission is necessary, that is something I'm open to, but we're not there yet. And what we're trying to do is have the facts drive the conversation, because the activity you referred to at 9/11, clearly at 9/11, we had an attack on American soil where 3,000 fellow Americans died. So you had an event, you had an activity that needed to be investigated. So what we're talking about here is investigating what Russia did in the election and its potential purposes and reasons why it did that.
But you made
that's
wrong
a fair question.
And
You
also,
only wrong conclusions.
About Russian hacking, which I think we all recognize, and I think all of us are feel that's horrible. But my question was specific about what action are you prepared to take if it's proven that there was collusion with the Russian government by the
Okay, so that is, so driving based on the facts, as we said, we'd be open to an escalation of that investigation, potentially an independent type of body, but that is down the road. We're not there yet. I don't see
we're
that
there. Are you
at this
kidding
point in
me?
time. I am always prepared to take action to make sure that national security interests are addressed, and will continue as we go forward with that position.
That they did things that were hidden
To influence the election, not the process. See, this is where I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. But some people are trying to conflate this and say that somehow the Russians broke the integrity of the election process. And that's not what we're talking about. Just so we're all on the same page, right?
Just so we're all on the same page,
You're
the
saying,
only
I'm just
one
trying to
that talks
understand
about
where Kevin's
election
at,
fraud
where other
is
folks
President
are.
Trump.
So what they're referring to is the relationship between the administration and Russia, and whether there was some collusion. That's what you're concerned about the most.
Can you give the mic to the speaker?
please share the microphone.
Good idea.
surveillance on individual Americans, but we have a very strong process for the unmasking of names. And I think the unmasking of names, the process was followed, and that people in the White House have the ability to have unmasked names, as does the president. So I'm not so sure that that's really the issue.
Ooh, no, that's not true.
Okay, you explain to me what that's true.
Yeah, no. There's very strict rules. When you're involved in a surveillance activity, and I'm not by any means, I don't serve on the Intelligence Committee, but in order to get access to this information, in order to see this information, you have to have very high-level classified clearance. You have to have very strict protocols to do that. Where this information was shared is what the early indications are. People didn't have that classified information. People had access to information that they should not have been even sharing with anyone else. The investigation. The investigation is proving it. And the Intelligence Committee. No. The investigation is, that's what the investigation is all about. That's why we appreciate that the investigation is doing this. And you see the evidence now coming out, because if the investigation wasn't occurring, you would never have seen the recent reports and the evidence that's starting to come out of the process. So we are going through that process. So I guess we have a disagreement here, so I appreciate that. The investigations are going to continue. They're not stopping.
There's only one, the Senate.
Where the facts are.
There's only one investigation now.
At the same time, we would not have known, had Congressman Nunes not done double news conferences, we wouldn't have known anything about this. You know, he is leaked. You people talk about leaks and you talk about security. You know, you talk about unmasking. You voted this week to unmask all of our internet.
Yep, exactly.
This was a very good question. This was something we debated at length in the office. And
Not long enough. Not long enough.
In my office. We had a very lengthy debate about this.
Not long enough.
Well, I appreciate that.
And your vote was
But-
no?
So just so.
$1,500.
Okay, all right.
That's true.
Okay, so the question that is being asked, and this is where I understand the privacy concern, And this is where we
You don't,
really
because you voted
weighed in on
against
this
us.
Because I was kind of very much undecided throughout the entire day and the week that led up to this vote.
Well, you picked the wrong
Now,
way.
we voted for it. Just so you understand, we will always be straight with you and tell you why we voted for what we voted for.
He'll tell you he screwed
So
you over.
when you look at what was
He does.
being proposed, and I believe that, I would hope most people agree with me, that we want an open and free internet. It is an area that, to me, is something that we should stand together for, that we should encourage it. And when we talk about having government regulation going into the internet, the counter argument to the privacy concerns that are raised, which are legitimate points, and I get the other argument, I get the other side. When you talk about the internet, once you go down the path of regulating it, where do the regulations stop?
But they
So
benefit
we
us.
get down on the side of
Regulations
open
protect us.
and free internet. Now, understand that some people support regulations of the internet
Privacy.
that would protect privacy.
Privacy.
So the question then becomes, does the internet have an expectation of privacy like other areas like the home, like your car, and other areas that we have determined over time have that expectation of privacy? Right now, the internet, because you want it to be open and free,
This is
generally considered
ridiculous.
as an open space.
No.
When you walk down the street, the expectation of privacy is different than when you
I
walk
pay
down.
$50 a month for my service.
This is why this is a great conversation, because we need to agree as a country. We have to
My hand
agree as
is
a
raised.
country. Does the internet activity have the same protections as working in your home or driving in your
So,
car?
hold
It's a legitimate debate, and it's not something I take lightly.
It's
not
not
something
really a
I laugh
debate.
about. It's not
I pay
something
money.
that
I mean, I
don't
pay money
take
for my
with
internet
slight
service.
disregard. Because once you go down this path, and you have the
No.
expectation of privacy, totally different situation than what you have when you have an open and free internet that some people are advocating for completely.
I don't have free internet.
I pay $50 a month to Time Warner Cable. I mean, I pay for my service.
Thousands. Thousands. I don't look at it that way. I don't.
There you go.
Thousands of
You
people.
don't, yep.
Just so
Actually,
we're
this
clear.
way.
You cannot function in this world without exposing private information on the internet. Banking, healthcare, etc. You're treating this like it's an open playground. It is not. It's how people live. And you are allowing ISPs to sell
Yep.
private information. You are irresponsible.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I know.
You have never represented the people. You have never represented me. The
I
entire
appreciate
time,
that.
wait a minute, the entire time that you have been an officer, you have never one day represented me. I'm an American woman. First of all, you don't represent women. You
Yep.
impose-
Agree. Absolutely.
You have imposed your religion on women with birth control rights. You have never stood by gay people. You remember Sergeant Johnson killed in service, right? You stood up against her and her rights as an American citizen and military person, and her wife, who was a survivor when she was killed. You denied them the right to serve openly because you supported Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the defense of marriage, right? And she did not get her survivor's pay. 2 years into your term, I came to you with military people who were gay, and you declined to help them. You made this woman's survivor, her wife, sue the government because you and some of your constituents who are Republican did not want gay people to live openly in the United States military. You did not want them to have the same freedoms that you and your wife enjoy. You do not want them to have marriage, right? You said you could have a contract, but you can't have the legal right to marry, which every human being wants. They want a family. You don't want to recognize their children. Your church is the Catholic Church, which is a supremacist organization, and so is the Republican Party, who are detriment to this country, and you should be booed and voted out. You don't represent anyone
sir,
We're
we're
gonna
not
agree
going
to
to agree to disagree on human rights.
Okay.
You have been a bigot for the entire time that you've been in office.
I appreciate that attack. That's your right to
It's
express
not an
it.
attack, that's a
I
fact.
sense it as an
You are a
attack.
bigoted man who should not be in public service. You cannot serve the public if you're a bigoted person.
Thank you. So, as we go forward, I think we got some other issues to talk about. So
Why
we're
don't
gonna
you
get to some-
apologize for your positions?
Well, just so we're clear, we are one of 18 Republicans who stood when the discriminatory vote came down for the LGBT community.
You did
So just
not.
so
You
the record,
supported don't ask, don't
the
tell,
Sean
and
Patrick
defense of
Maloney
marriage.
amendment is something I stood for and worked with Sean Patrick Maloney very closely with, because that's the right position to take. I care about individuals when we talk about discrimination.
But what
So
about
thank you.
rights of marriage?
So getting back to Trump, we did have Emily from Caroline wanted to know what you're doing to help drain the swamp, and she is referring back to Trump's taxes as well, and just wondering on they should be.
So again, this is Emily.
Emily from Caroline.
Emily from Caroline. Hi, Emily. Good to see you. Thanks for coming out this morning. So the specific questions on the Trump's taxes, we have taken the position and we have stood on the side. As you can tell, privacy and the rights of privacy are something that we take very
But not
seriously.
ours, except ours. Except our privacy, exactly.
So this is where there's a disagreement.
That's
And I
crazy.
understand
It's I mean, this is
on the
ridiculous.
internet, if you want it regulated for the sake of privacy.
No,
and we're not-
hang on, I pay
I
50.
understand.
Could I chime in, please?
So the privacy, because he's still an American citizen.
So am I. But now
He's a
my-
public official.
You would, and this is the discussion I had with colleagues on the other side of the aisle, we had this vote in the committee, was, are you okay with those tax releases, those tax returns being released for any American citizen?
He's the president of the United States. My goodness.
Okay, so, your position, just so I hear it, your position is, if you're the president of the United States, you don't have the same protections under the Constitution.
But we don't have protections either now.
Right? Is that what we're arguing? That's what your position is?
That is ridiculous, sir. That is absurd. As a public, excuse me, as a public servant, doesn't he have to rise to a higher level of ethics?
Agree.
So obviously, you know my position, we've been clear with you, and we voted on it, and the record is, and the question's been asked, and the vote has been taken, and the question is, do the privacy rights extend to the President of the United States like they do to everyone else?
But we don't have them now.
I
That's
believe it's a slippery slope that you go down when you start releasing individuals' tax returns because of the I appreciate it.
what. This is a joke.
Volunteer.
It's ridiculous.
I would like to say
Here.
I understand, and probably that's an unpopular position, but I do understand why you voted against it, that having the IRS release the returns. However, what you can do is support the bills that are in Congress that would require any sitting and
Agree.
future presidents to release
Agree.
them as a matter of general ethics. That it is appalling that the president and the vice president are exempt from all of the ethical rules that apply to everyone else. The assumption has always apparently been that those people will necessarily behave ethically, and the last year has shown us that that is not an assumption that we can have.
Agree. Great one.
That's a good, clear voice, and I appreciate that. Okay, so some taxes, I think we've covered in regards to where we stand on the issue, but
No,
Draining the swamp,
right in this one.
cabinet full of CEOs.
it's the Swamp Olympics now, is what it is. Right? It really is, right? It's a
I
swamp.
understand there is a tremendous amount of division and frustration, especially in this room, as well as we've had in other rooms, that people adamantly disagree with this president and do not respect this individual as our president. I get that.
That's not true.
And I understand where you're coming from, I understand the frustration, but the fact is, he won the election, and he is our president.
That does not mean you need to blindly have allegiance to him.
Oh,
you had it to Obama.
The essence of my question, if I could just, sorry, my small question was,
So the second question, what are we doing to drain the swamp? So we have been very supportive.
I mean, are we serious?
ran on something that I actually liked. You know, I thought that was a really good slogan, drain the swamp.
Drain the
You know,
swamp.
that, I mean, that was visceral, that was, yes, you know, he gets it, and
So
he
I
ran on it,
support-
but he's not
So
doing
I
it.
support his requirement that anybody serving in this administration cannot go into the lobbying world, the post-employment restrictions that these places impose. That is a good.
It's Goldman Sachs in the White House.
We agree.
I mean,
It's a good thing they've already made their billions.
Oh, well, there's a lot of folks that are over there that are not going to go back, that are not in that position, that are trying to do the work.
Can you let this gentleman ask the
Sure.
question?
Go ahead. You go.
So I have two issues that I'd like you to respond.
Give him the
Louder.
mic, please.
Thank you.
I have two issues.
There you go. See you.
Yeah, that's
See you.
good.
I know.
I have two issues I'd like you to respond to. The first one is, now that the Republicans have the presidency, the House, and the Senate, I'm wondering if you can share with us the specific measures we should keep an eye out for that are now going to improve. I'm a very progressive person, but it's not because I was like in a progressive household, it's because I feel like what we were all taught, like how do you decide who's right? It's, you should trust those thinkers and scientists and lawyers and people who tend to be more correct
agree.
than others. And something that's very frustrating is you've made all these predictions during the Obama administration. Inflation would skyrocket. It didn't. Unemployment would not drop. It did drop. A host of other predictions that were about the economy and healthcare collapsing, Social Security, all these things that were just false, right? And so now I'm looking for, well, what's going to happen now that you got the chance? I'm going to see these conservative policies. What's going to happen? You look at someplace like where Brownback was in charge, right? You got to do this conservative experiment. It's an absolute train wreck for the state, right? Total disaster. So you have it now. So what are we going to see now that you're going to deregulate, now that you're going to give taxes to the rich? What's going to change, right? The second issue is, I think you've done some really admirable work, speaking better than people in most parties, speaking up against sexual assault and to support victims of sexual assault. And I'm wondering if your strategy now changes because you have a president now who openly joked about committing sexual assault.
Exactly.
And so I want to know, how does that impact you as a politician? How does it impact you even as a person, right? I don't even know what you all do now. If you, God forbid, you have a daughter or someone who comes home and says, you know, Dad, I was out with a new boyfriend and he was calling my friends fat and ugly and he actually joked about grabbing their genitals. I mean, do you say, get away from that dirtbag, or do you go, honey, you should stick with it one day?
Hey, you should vote for him.
So I have to, I want you to specifically address, how do you think having someone like Trump who's joked about an issue that I know you care about, how does it change your strategy? And then last quick, real quick, in this budget, one of the things that's being cut is a lot of money to organizations like the Advocacy Center in Ithaca that does the exact work that you say is important. Almost a third of their budget. So talk is cheap and trips to Mar-a-Lago are not. And so how are we going to plan fiscal conservative beliefs if we're going to let them get cut so that these people can vacation every weekend, or that the wife isn't it's not good enough to be in the most prestigious address on earth. We're going to let them do that and spend millions while cutting funding for people who do that important work.
What? And I think you know that, and we stand with you in regards to.
I'm a supporter. I'm not speaking up.
You don't stand with
What's
women.
that?
You know.
Okay.
You
So
don't stand with women
the
at all,
strategy
sir.
that we deploy in regards to the issue that you raised on sexual assault is something we are committed to. We are committed to raising awareness. We're committed to policies that are going to call that out. And I understand we have an individual who disagrees adamantly and vehemently
Not
against our.
individual, quite a few.
And others, and that's part of the that criticism, and we respect it. So what we hope we can demonstrate to you is when we have this budget debate, that we are going to stand in different areas that are in disagreement with what's been proposed by the president. And things like this advocacy work, things like making sure that sexual assault is given the prioritization that it deserves, we will stand firm on. Things like community development block grant, things like the Appalachian Regional Commission. We are already expressing our need to make sure we don't zero out those programs. But you raised a great question in a bigger conversation that we also need to have. Because just as we all agree potentially on those issues, because the pot is not endless, and I think you pointed out, you think some use it for other purposes and some go here, and therefore if it's used over here, it doesn't get here. So the question that we need to have, and this is why we do these town halls to get input, is to what is the priority of you, the people we represent. And that's why we're looking for that input. And then we try to talk to all 717,000 people we represent outside of this room also to make sure their input is not ignored as we go through this process. And so I'm very interested in the conversation of priorities, of where the spending goes. And so we just articulated to you, I think, some very clear priorities that we agree with. Great Lakes Initiative is another one that we are very supportive of. The funding for our manufacturing enterprise programs are something else that I'm very committed to. That's where our Revitalize American Manufacturing Innovation Act centers and the funding that is associated with U.S. manufacturing come from to a large degree. So we spend a lot of time advocating and prioritizing that.
What about the money for the wall?
The wall, okay?
Yeah,
Well,
that could be used in better ways.
What's that?
Can you, real quick, can you answer the first part of the question?
What was the first part of the question?
The measures, what can we, like I hear these things about, well, we want the input, but for example, I think it was just clarified that when the input about privacy and ISP comes in, you don't really track it, right? So you just talked about gathering up input, but I'm pretty sure you just said you don't really care when it comes in. We don't really see what our representatives say.
No, it's not that I don't care. That's not accurate. I don't track numbers. I don't track, like some people are like, and I've got this question by a large group, and I think they're trying to put us in a position where, okay, if you tell me what a number is, I had one individual that we had a great conversation with out in a snowstorm that was protesting the mess. It's like, what number do I have to show to you that somehow you would then take the position that I want you to take? And what that implied to me is that, okay, well, if you have enough Facebook hits, if you have enough social media emails, and things like that coming in, that if you hit a number, that they're able to establish that they were able to provide to us that somehow we didn't listen to those individuals. So what we try to do is just have an open conversation, talk to as many people as we possibly can, real people. That's why I do these, real people, not addresses on an email who we don't know who they are. You're not talking to them, you're not looking them in the eye. And so we try to go throughout the whole district, and we do it not only in town halls, but we do it in forums. We do it just going to local restaurants. Some of the best conversations and the best input I've ever had are when people don't even know who I am, which I so appreciate. So I will walk into a cafe, I walk into a diner, sit down, have a cup of coffee, and start talking to people. Then you actually get what's really going on in the community, what's really going on. So that's what we try to do.
Can we go back to the first question though? Again, I'm excited now. This is go time. This is your time to show me conservative policies work.
Well, this is something.
So what's about to happen in my area of Ithaca with these crazy liberal policies that amazing quality of life with low unemployment and great social.
Well, it's interesting to say that because there are a lot of folks who look at what's going on as a great success, and I applaud what's going on in Ithaca. I applaud what's going on in Cornell. I applaud what's going on in Ithaca. We've been very close. But the model that's deployed there, it's $1 billion of public money that goes into the institution each year. Do you realize that? It's $1 billion. And so $1 billion going into that institution, how do you deploy that to 300 million people? Do you provide $1 billion to each one of those individuals, or do you invest $5 million? So the question then becomes, is that doable? I'm of the mindset
Oh my God.
that it's not.
Higher ed isn't doable.
It's not doable to have $1 billion be given to every
They
single
employ,
American so that
yeah,
you can have a
exactly. The
successful
research, everything.
But
But who-
So the issue that you're talking about is what are the conservative policies that are going to show success?
There you go.
Your success, your definition of success probably aren't going to match up with what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, it sounds to me as you want to trust the academics, you want to trust the individuals without verification or asking the questions.
Wait, we're against academics?
What you're advocating for is bigger government that is the solution to the problem. That's what I.
What does that have to do with bigger government? I'm talking about college. What is going on?
Okay.
I'm
following.
Logic, reason, and history, and look at what are called liberal policies or liberal advocates. They seem to predict the future better in terms of what's going to happen, quality of life, state of the economy, things like that. Whereas the conservative ones that I've seen are often wrong when they have the time to implement their policies. And by the way, it doesn't matter who does it, right? So you have Bill Clinton and the Democrats sell out the working class, destroy Glass-Steagall and deregulate, they implement conservative policies, the economy collapses. So what I'm saying is right now you have to
Well, I appreciate that
implement
message.
conservative policies.
So you're,
So what's going
the
to
collapse
happen
of the
now in
economy.
America? What am I going to do?
There's a lot of people advocate differently on the collapse of the economy and putting policies. So I appreciate
I mean, those
you.
people consistently strong.
So what we're going to promote, what we are trying to promote, is more freedom, more to the state, which some people in and of themselves say that is a success, less government in their life. And so I think you're going to see policies at the end of the day that promote that type of individualism that we, as conservatives, as a Republican, generally subscribe to. And the success that that will generate will also be deployed, I believe, economically. When you get government out of the way, when you hear the stories of small business folks that are so tired of filling out paperwork rather than putting their trucks on the road or making their widgets in their back factory, or just in the factory in Jamestown yesterday. They want to be able to just attend to the business, not to the paperwork and bureaucracy. So that is a success. I think you're going to see regulatory relief for our farmers that they will say is a celebratory success. We need to talk about waters of the U.S. and a step in the direction that is going to allow them to be recognized as something that's not going to be terrible, that can be done in a safe and responsible way, and develop the agricultural community that our district, I think, really cares about, the top priority.
So the Republican platform is that an America where people are free to do poor and unhealthy. So that's essentially what I just said.
That's where I think, to characterize that's what the goal is of us, is just not what we're.
He's characterizing the result.
The
Free.
results. So you predict the results based on evidence.
Does that mean talk about increased
Go ahead.
diet choices?
Yeah, great question.
I wanted to get to the second largest topic of today, which was environment. Nancy from Owego wanted to know how you feel about potential cuts to the EPA, clean water, Great Lakes Initiative, and testing from Nancy's here.
Nancy's over here? Okay, Nancy. We've talked before, and we appreciate that. So asking about our position on the environment and the different issues that are coming down the pipeline on the horizon and the funding.
Basically take at least 50% of the staffers away, which are almost entirely scientists or people who are out to, their job is to help with regulation of clean water. And we see what happened in Flint, Michigan. There are several communities in New York State that have high levels of lead in their water. So if you're going to decrease the people who can assist communities in providing clean water and air, that's not a good thing.
So, where I stand, because the question is where I stand on the issue,
But
is.
you're my representative, so I think
So-
we're going to listen to how
Yep.
we feel.
And I think we're going to have more common ground here than disagree on the issue. So when it comes to the EPA, I am not of the school of thought, where there is a school of thought in D.C. and across the country, that the EPA should be zeroed out and removed. in existence.
There is not.
Well, no, there's a school of thought to
The
that.
Secretary of the Environment
Yes.
that are like the antichrist of that department.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this question.
DeVos with education doesn't believe in education.
Eliminate each one of these departments.
Okay, so where I stand on the issue, just so we're clear, to answer the question, is we believe the EPA has a role at the federal level, should continue to have a role. Now, do I believe that the EPA has at times and has overreached its purpose and what it's
Name one
trying
time
to
that they
accomplish?
did that.
What's that?
Name one time
Oh,
they did that.
Water of the US. Water of the US is probably a great example of it, where they were overreaching and regulating way beyond what I think is a reasonable approach to the issue that our farmers were facing with that regulation and what they were going to do to businesses that would, it's incomprehensible to me that they were going that far with regulations for things that really were not going to cause a significant positive result to the environmental concerns and spills and things like that. Boiler map, give you another example. Boiler map, where they had regulations, you know what the boiler map standards were? So the boiler map regulations were essentially regulations that were going to outlaw boilers because they were proposing standards that they didn't even have technology in order to measure whether or not they comply with the regulatory emissions from those boilers. That doesn't make sense to me. No, I'm talking all boilers. I'm talking school officials were calling me. City halls were calling me, saying we can't comply with this mandate because the boilers that you're saying we have to build, we don't have the technology even to say whether or not they're in compliance with the regulation EPA.
So
that to me
So
is
then what happens?
excessive and beyond. So the question was asked,
Right,
where do
exactly.
we see the overreach of the EPA? There's just off the top
But
of
what
my
happened with that?
couple of examples.
What happened with that though? It's,
We were able to beat that back.
and
Once
so the
we-
process worked though. That's the
once
point.
we put a spotlight on it.
Exactly. That's why you're here.
So that's why we believe that having that type of EPA.
And that's
that
why you're here to help
recognizes
us.
at the get-go that you should have a cost-benefit reasonableness standard in regards to the regulations you're putting out would be more effective and efficient to accomplish.
But you
what
were able
we're
to
trying
help us,
accomplish.
and we don't have to shut the EPA down because of it. The process worked. I don't understand. If that's the case, let's just get rid of them. Get rid of the EPA and our Congress people, and it'd be fine. Save a lot of money.
And then the damage that it occurred is unbelievable. I'm old enough to remember when the Chicago River was on fire, because I'm from Wisconsin.
Cuyahoga River.
Love Canal.
Littman.
Yes,
No,
the Love
I'm from
Canal.
Wisconsin. I'm
Okay.
saying the Chicago River was
Okay.
on fire. And also in Ohio.
On the Cuyahoga.
And of course, you couldn't even step into Lake Erie. And
Love
so
Canal.
And we're not done cleaning that stuff up.
So that's why I think there's more agreement here than disagreement. So we support.
No, there's a lot more disagreement.
So we support having the EPA have a role and a mission which is based on a reasonable standard and a cost-benefit analysis of its regulation. Just so you know where I stand. That's
With
why
no
this is
staff
clear.
to do that.
Now, it may not be,
No staff to
it
do
may
that.
not be something you think is far enough and that you want us to go farther and more down the path of that bigger EPA. But I'm just telling you where we stand on the issue. So well,
I also want them to be things on a sign.
I haven't seen a budget that's contained the 28% budget, so to tell us what we're voting comparative to, I can't answer that question today. So if it's we're 1%, 2%, do you want me to answer each one of the numbers? We're not, we're
Sure.
going to support
Go ahead.
the mission.
I have
We'll
time.
support the mission of the EPA.
Go ahead, answer that. I'll wait.
Given where we are, I'm very confident that the requests that are coming from the administration in regards to the budget that's being proposed will not make it into law, and that is good, because there are priorities that we are going to fight for, and that we will